Welcome to this breakaway crochet tutorial. In this video, I'm going to show you how to use my breakaway crochet techniques to work this Ferris wheel throw, which is based on the granny square I designed to help celebrate International Granny Square Day 2023. You can download the free written pattern for this from my Ravelry pattern store. And while the written pattern sets out the full step-by-step instructions for this project, in this video I will focus more on specific concepts that might be hard to understand by reading the pattern alone. Aside from visiting my Ravelry pattern store, you may also like to check out my Breakaway Crochet website for more tutorials, as well as the motif library, project ideas, inspiration, and much more. Please see the description for links to all these resources. So let's take a closer look at how this project is put together. Notice that this throw is made up of nothing more than Ferris wheel squares joined together. At first glance, it looks like the squares were made individually and then joined together later. But since this is a breakaway crochet project, we're going to do things in a totally different way. That is, I'm going to show you how to work every square in this project endlessly and with no ends. That means we will be working all squares in the entire project in one continuous flow, without ever having to break the yarn between each one. So in order to string along an endless number of endless squares, we will be following a specific sequence. In the written pattern, I've broken this down into a set of stages. So let's get going with that now. So let's start with our very first motif, which is in the bottom left corner of the throw. We will be starting at this point here and working stage 1 of this motif. Now stage 1 just means we are going to be working this first round. This first round is the same on every square, so I've abbreviated that as WFR in the pattern. So whenever you see that abbreviation, here's what you do. We start with a floating double crochet. To do that, start with a yarn over and then make the floating ring. To make the floating ring, do another yarn over the hook and pinch very close to the hook. Do another yarn over and draw this new thread in with what you're already pinching. You've got 2 pinched loops just underneath the hook. Finish the floating ring with another yarn over and pull through the 2 loops you're pinching. So these 2 very small loops here are what we will be working the rest of the stitches into as we continue this double crochet wheel. Let's finish the double crochet part of this stitch by using the loops that are already on the hook. And that just means yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And there is our floating double crochet stitch. Continue this double crochet wheel with 9 more double crochets into the floating ring. So that gives us the equivalent of 10 double crochet stitches so far in this little mini wheel. Now continue with 4 chain, and we're now going to make the center wheel of the motif. And since the little wheel in the middle is made up of single crochets, we start this with a floating single crochet. That means just start making the floating ring straight away. Again with the yarn over pinch, yarn over pinch, yarn over, pull through 2 loops to make the floating ring. Do the single crochet part with the yarn over, pull through 2, and there is the floating single crochet. Work 7 more single crochets into this floating ring. And close the ring with a slip stitch into the first stitch of the wheel. So there is our little single crochet wheel that sits right in the very middle finished. Let's continue with the first round with 4 chain. And now we're going to start the next, we've already started this one, gone to the middle, gone around here. Now let's go back out and just start this next double crochet wheel. Again, that starts with a floating double crochet. And this time we only need 3 more double crochets into this ring before we move on. Four more chain, and now we're going to connect the end of this chain back into our center wheel. So count back 4 chains, the 4 double crochets, 4 chains until you get back to the center wheel. So this is counting behind the hook until you get back to the single crochet wheel. And we're going to slip stitch into that next stitch there. So just dip the hook behind, under, bring everything to the left of the hook, and make that slip stitch. And that's pretty much our pattern for the rest of this first round. So I'll continue on around until I have 7 of these little kinds of little floating or double crochet wheels started, and plus this one. So there we are. We've got 8 double crochet wheels started. That was the very beginning one, and then the 7 we've just made that connect to the center single crochet wheel there. Let's finish round 1 with another chain 4, and we're going to slip stitch into this stitch here of the first wheel. So chain 4, and the instructions say to help you count back, you're counting back 4 chains behind the hook here, and keep going along these 4 chains here behind the hook. Skip these first 3 double crochets and slip stitch into that next double crochet, and that helps connect this wheel up in the same way that the other ones are. We're almost finished with round 1. The next thing to do is to think about coming back and working around counterclockwise around the square, and we're going to do a slip stitch behind, which goes behind this chain and the next one. So just insert the hook, go behind that chain, go behind that one, come back out, and work a slip stitch. And that kind of joins those 2 together and makes them pop out a little bit because you're doing the stitch behind the chains. And that is round 1 finished, or stage 1. So to continue with stage 2, we're going to work around these wheels on the edge here until we get to the breakaway point. So That just means continue in the next wheel. Since each double crochet wheel needs 16 double crochets and we only have the 4, let's work 12 more double crochets into that next wheel. And once all the double crochets are worked, we're going to work another slip stitch behind, which goes behind the next 2 chain 4s, just like we did before. Find the next wheel and work 12 more double crochets into that one. And again, the slip stitch behind. So that's the pattern over the next few wheels. You want to go ahead and work until you get to this 5th wheel. So I've got one more here to put 12 more double crochets into. Slip stitching behind. And then on this 5th wheel I come to, I only need 6 double crochets into it, because that means we've reached the breakaway point, and that's where we will skip to the next square. So when I talk about stage 2, that's where you should be after the first square. So this is the breakaway point. We're going to go ahead and work another square just like this one, and in fact all the squares along this foundation row are worked in exactly the same way. So in the pattern I've written that you should be doing 8 squares across. For this sample in this video, I'm just going to do 3 squares across. So I'm going to go ahead and work 2 more squares just like this one, and then I'll show you what to do next. So here's the foundation row complete in this sample. Just a reminder that I did not break the yarn when I went from each square. So in other words, this was the first one. When I got to the breakaway point, I went straight onto this one, starting with the floating double crochet to start this little double crochet wheel here, and worked the first round, and then just started the second round in stage 2 before I got to the breakaway point here, and went on to this one, working the first round and then starting the second round and finishing after the 6th stitch on this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th wheel here. Okay. Also notice that because this is going to be the edge of my piece, these 3 are going to sit right on the edge, I didn't put in the little these little filler single crochet wheels here. Normally there would be a couple going in these positions here and up each side. I'm just leaving that off on this throw, just on the edges. I just think it looks better. We're going to be putting them in later on, so we're not leaving them out completely. Alright, so this is the foundation row finished. Let's go on to stage 3, which is a return row, and that means we pretty much work back the other way, much more like as if we were doing just a normal row in crochet. And we will be finishing off these wheels here that only have 4 double crochets so far, and we're also going to start putting in those little filler single crochet wheels here, because these sections here are going to be kind of in the middle of the piece. Alright, so to continue with our return row, our stage 3, let's just finish off the current wheel it needs 6 more double crochets. And of course from here on it's pretty much what we've been doing before. Go ahead and do that slip stitch behind and move on to the next wheel with 12 double crochets into it. And of course the next single crochet or slip stitch, sorry, behind, and 12 more into the next wheel. Slip stitching behind. And now for this last unfinished wheel in this square, this is where we start adding our filler wheels. So on that last unfinished wheel of this one on the end, work 6 double crochets, which gets us, kind of to the halfway point. And go ahead and put a single crochet wheel here. And that starts with a floating single crochet, 7 single crochets into this floating ring. And to close this little wheel here, we do a slip stitch between it and the double crochet wheel just next door. So just go over those connecting threads with a slip stitch, and then we resume work back on that same double crochet wheel we were working on before and put 6 more double crochets into it. Close it off as usual with our slip stitch behind. And now that we are at the last wheel of the round, or from the very first one we actually started, remember that one already has 10 double crochets in, so we only need 6 more for that one. And now that we have finished off all of our wheels on this square, it's time to move on to the next one in the series, but we need to close this wheel off with a slip stitch between the 2 double crochet wheels. So there, that's that last square of the row finished with our little filler wheel there. And we're ready to continue along the row. This next one, we work almost like this one. We've got another filler wheel to put in on that, which will come, this is getting a little bit tangled here. When we do this wheel here, we've got another filler wheel, but we've got to connect the 2. So that's something that will be slightly different. I'll just work, I'll finish this wheel here and come to the point where this filler wheel happens and show you how to do that. So there we are. I worked 6 more double crochets in that wheel, slip stitch behind. I've got 6 more double crochets here. Now let's do a filler wheel and connect it to the previous one. Again, that starts with a floating single crochet. And just do 1 more single crochet, because now we're at a joining point. And the instructions say to look behind the hook. So we're going, if you were to kind of spread this out behind the hook, you're counting back 1, 2, 3, 4 of the double crochet wheels until you get to the next little single crochet filler wheel. Let me just pick this all back up again. We found the filler wheel, we skip 1 stitch and slip stitch into the next one. So there we've joined the two little filler wheels. Let's continue with this little filler wheel with the 6 remaining single crochets into it. And again, we close it with a slip stitch between it and the next double crochet wheel. And there we've connected those two little single crochet wheels together. Now resume with the double crochet we were working on with 6 more double crochets. And as usual, slip stitch behind, and in the next wheel we need 12 double crochets, as that sits at the top of the square. Finish that one off, and again, this is the coming up here is the last wheel of this round, and we also need to put a filler wheel on it. So I'll work 6 double crochets, do our single crochet wheel, again with the single crochet, and 7 single crochets into the floating ring, slip stitch between, finish the double crochet wheel with 6 more double crochets, slip stitch behind, and here we are on the last wheel. Again, we only need 6 more double crochets, and since this is the last wheel of this square, we slip stitch between the 2 squares and move on to the next square. I'll just pause here to give you a look at how things should be. Here's the 2 little filler wheels that we've joined. Here's a brand new one, which we will join when we work this square here. So I won't go through quite all of that again by now. You should see what's going on. Finish off this wheel with another, I've already done the first double crochet, but do 6 double crochets here, slip stitch behind. When you get to this wheel, it is 6 more double crochets. Start the filler wheel with a floating single crochet, 1 single crochet, and joining it. Finish with 6 more single crochets, 6 more double crochets, and so on. So since this is the first wheel of the row, we're not going to go all the way to the end. We actually need to stop at this wheel here, or at this point, so that we can go upstairs. So to finish this square off, we just need to finish these 2 wheels here with the filler that is joined, and then the first 6 double crochets of this wheel. And there's our return row finished. And we're now ready to go upstairs for the next square that will sit just above here. I'll go ahead and work the first round and show you how to join up the filler wheels here. So there we are. I've done round 1 of this next square, and I've just started the next wheel with the first 6 double crochets, and now it's time to work the little filler wheel that will go here, and that's just like we've done before. It's just, oriented a different way, so don't be confused by that. It's all just the same thing, starting with a floating single crochet, 1 more single crochet into this floating ring, And again, you're counting back behind the hook, 1, 2, 3, 4 double crochet wheels until you get to the next single crochet wheel, which is that one there. Skip that very first single crochet and slip stitch into the next one. Oops. And that joins up the third of the 4 wheels. Just finish this wheel off with 6 more single crochets, just like before. Slip stitch between the 2 wheels, and just like as usual, finish up this next wheel with the next 6 double crochets. Finish this off, they slip stitch behind, and for this first square of this row, as usual, we only need to work a quarter of the way around this square, so our breakaway point comes after the 6th stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th stitch of this wheel. So there, that's our breakaway point for the first square. We'll go ahead and work another square here. It's pretty much the same except for a couple of new things. So again, I'll go ahead and work the first round, and I'll meet you when it's time to join the next little single crochet wheel here. That's slightly different. And now that round 1 has been worked, I've started round 2 with the first 6 double crochets in that next wheel. And again, it's time for a filler single crochet wheel here. And since it is the 4th one of the group, there are 2 joins. It has to join to this one and this one. So I just thought I would take you through that. I'll go ahead and start the single crochet wheel, and that starts the same way with a floating single crochet and just 1 single crochet. That puts us at the first joining point. Alright, now we're going to look 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll do that again. 1, 2, 3, 4 double crochet wheels behind the hook. Find that first wheel there. So this is just like we've done before. Skip the first single crochet and slip stitch into the second one. And this time we've got to work to the next joining point, which happens after 4 single crochets. So 4 more single crochets. And now remember, we've got to join up to this other wheel here. So you can pretty much suss this out. We've got a group of 4. We've got this first one to join into the last one. So find the last one in that group of 4, and we're going to skip 4 single crochets, and this time slip stitch into that stitch. So looking the other way, we're skipping this stitch here and going into that one. So that kind of makes it the same for all 4 of our little wheels here. So that's joined in the second time. We still got 2 more single crochets in the current little single crochet wheel. Finish it off with the slip stitch between and back to the double crochet wheel with 6 more double crochets. So there's the 4 joined up. I went ahead and finished off the rest of this wheel. I've started the next wheel with 6 more double crochets and stop now because here's another joining point. This wheel has to join into the one below. This is a joined foundation row, so we've got to join our squares up. All right. So you can either just kind of eyeball it here. It's the very top of this wheel, which is 6 stitches back. Or if you're following the instructions to the letter, when I tell you to count behind the hook, and we're counting 1, 2 double crochet wheels, 2 single crochet wheels, 1, 2, and we're ending up with this wheel here. So it's another way to think of it. It's the only wheel that's not joined to anything else quite yet. All right, so count back 6 stitches, and that's where we join into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Slip stitch into the top of that stitch. 6 more double crochets. Slip stitch behind. Start the next wheel with 6 double crochets. And time for another filler wheel. Let me get sorted here. And again, just working our wheel and joining it just one time. It's just the third wheel of the group, so there's just that one join. That's exactly like we've been doing before, so I won't go through that again. All right, so hopefully I've gone through the joins, which is probably the most confusing thing here. So I've gone through all the possible joins, and hopefully that's cleared that up for you, as well as all the floating stitches and the general order of things. But that should be enough to get you on your way. Everything else pretty much repeats as we've been going. Just remember, on the very last row, we're leaving off the filler stitches. So at the very top, we don't need the fillers. And when you come down and finish off the left side, we're not doing the filler stitches. It's just going to be just straight shooting 12 more double crochets into any double crochet wheel that's not finished. So I hope that wasn't going too quickly for you. I don't want to be too repetitive in my explanation, so I tried to cover at least the basics for each significant part of the pattern. But like I say, if you're still confused and need more explanation, let me know. And you can also join my Facebook group where we can help you out there as well. Check the description for links. So I hope to see any projects you make, and I hope to see you again soon.